Ambassador Cassandra Nguyen sat in the sleek command center of the Earth orbit diplomatic vessel Sovereign, staring out the panoramic window. Below her, Earth rotated slowly, the blue oceans and swirling clouds casting an almost peaceful glow against the inky black of space. The delegation was nearly ready to dock at the Aetherian station, where humanity would meet the alien race for the first time. After years of planning, Earth was finally making its presence known in the galactic community. The excitement aboard the Sovereign was palpable, a sense of history about to be made. But Cassandra could feel an undercurrent of tension. She wasn't sure if it was the excitement of the mission or something more insidious gnawing at her. The Aetherians were known for their technological prowess, their peaceful nature, and their impressive longevity. But they were also known to keep their cards close to their chest, reluctant to share much about their past. Just as the excitement reached its peak, the ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Alva Cruz, interrupted her thoughts with a sharp tone. Ambassador Nguyen, we've received an anomalous signal. It's coming from a deep space relay station just beyond the outer rim of the system. It's encrypted, and it seems to be targeted directly at us. Cassandra frowned. Is it from the Aetherians? Could it be a greeting or some form of communication? We've run it through the protocols, Cruz replied. It's definitely not from the Aetherians. The encryption is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's old, very old. Cassandra's curiosity piqued. Can we decode it? Possibly, Cruz said, but it will take time. The encryption seems layered, almost as if it were designed to be difficult to crack. Cassandra motioned for Cruz to proceed. Proceed, Lieutenant. Let's see what we're dealing with. Hours passed as the crew worked tirelessly to decrypt the message, the hum of machinery and soft peeps of monitors filling the air. As Cassandra paced the room, she found herself growing more anxious, though she couldn't quite place why. The mission was meant to be a new chapter in human history, but this signal felt like a warning. At last, Cruz's voice broke through the tension. Ambassador, we've got it. The message is bizarre. Cassandra moved to the console. The screen flickered to life, revealing a series of symbols. Alien, certainly, but they seemed oddly familiar. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over her. Then, as if the universe itself had been waiting for this moment, the message finally unfolded. The gods are stirring. They do not know yet, but you will. When the gods awaken, beware. Do not seek the truth. The war is not yet over. The message froze on the screen. Silence filled the room. For a moment, Cassandra thought she might be dreaming. The room was still, all eyes locked on her. Is this a threat? She whispered. Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems flickered. Then a low rumble reverberated through the hull, sending a shockwave through the vessel. Cassandra's heart raced as the warning became real. The Aetherian station, once a symbol of peace and diplomacy, loomed ahead, silent and still, like a dormant predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, something deep inside Cassandra's chest stirred. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if the message had triggered something buried far beneath her consciousness, something forgotten, ancient. Cassandra's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the console. The message's words echoed in her mind. The gods are stirring. They do not know yet, but you will. She couldn't shake the sensation that something was coming, something powerful, and it wasn't just the Aetherians they had to worry about. Lieutenant Cruz, she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. What's happening with the Aetherian station? Why hasn't it responded to our arrival? Cruz's fingers flew over the controls. I'm attempting to establish contact. Ambassador. There's no answer. The station's communications are down, and its power levels are fluctuating. It's as if it's dormant, or something has silenced it. Cassandra murmured. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. I need to report this. As Cruz worked to send a secure message, the first signs of humanity's latent abilities began to surface, small but undeniable. In a military base in Nevada, Sergeant Ethan Hayes was at his post, running a routine training exercise with his squad when the shift happened. The order had been simple: clear a series of mock obstacles, navigate through an urban warfare simulation, and complete it under a set time limit. But as Ethan sprinted through the mock battlefield, something inside him flared, a sudden burst of energy, raw and unfiltered. He leaped over a wall effortlessly, clearing a distance he knew was impossible for any human. His squad mates watched in stunned silence as Ethan landed without a sound, his muscles pulsing with unnatural strength. What the hell was that? Private Miller gasped, his voice a mix of awe and fear. Ethan blinked, looking down at his hands, confused. He had never felt like this before, like he could push through anything, break through the limits of the human body. It wasn't just strength, it was awareness. He could sense everything, from the exact angle of the sun in the sky to the faintest movements of a distant bird. The world around him seemed slower, more predictable. He shook his head, trying to focus. "We're going to finish this drill," he said, his voice strange even to his own ears, filled with newfound confidence. But something inside him, something deep and ancient, whispered that this was just the beginning. As the day wore on, more and more reports trickled in from around the world. A soldier in Germany was able to heal a deep wound in moments. A scientist in Russia calculated complex equations in an instant. A civilian in Brazil experienced vivid dreams of ancient battles, dreams that felt too real to be simply imagination. The genetic trigger, whatever it was, had been activated. Back aboard the Sovereign, Cassandra stared at the flickering screens in front of her. Earth Command had just sent an urgent message. "We're seeing unusual activity from your ship, Ambassador. Reports are coming in from across the planet. People, humans, are changing. It's as if something deep within their biology has been awakened." She felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she turned to Lieutenant Cruz. "You think this is connected to the signal?" "I don't know, Ambassador," Cruz replied, her eyes wide. "But it's spreading. Fast." Suddenly, the communication system buzzed again, cutting through the tension. An urgent transmission from Earth Command appeared on the screen. This time, it was not just a warning, it was a command. "Ambassador, the Aetherian fleet is moving. They're heading toward Earth. We don't know why, but it's clear they know what's happening." Cassandra's mind raced. The Aetherians had always been peaceful, but this was different. This was a threat, and it was as if they knew the humans' hidden potential had just been unleashed. As she looked at the growing chaos of human awakening, Cassandra understood one undeniable truth. The war gods were not just a myth. They were real, and now they were stirring. The first signs of war were already here, and humanity had no choice but to rise to meet them. The Sovereign drifted closer to the Aetherian station, the distant stars beyond the hull offering no comfort as Cassandra paced the command deck. Tension thickened the air like a storm on the horizon, and she could sense it in the eyes of every crew member. The unexpected surge of human potential was unsettling. No one fully understood what was happening, not even the brightest minds on Earth. Outside, the Aetherian station loomed ominously. It was silent, its massive structure a stark contrast to the quiet hum of human ships. Despite the lack of communication, there was a growing sense of danger among the crew. "Ambassador," Cruz's voice cut through the silence, "we've detected Aetherian warships. They're not in full formation yet, but they're definitely moving toward Earth. Fast." Cassandra's heart sank. Why now? Why have they gone on the offensive? "We don't know, but it doesn't look good. They're preparing for something." As if on cue, an alarm blared across the ship. The bridge erupted in a flurry of activity. Cruz's face paled. The Aetherians just fired a warning shot, directly at Earth's orbital defenses. The shock of the attack reverberated through Cassandra. The Aetherians had never been hostile. Their reputation as peaceful explorers had been a cornerstone of human diplomacy for decades. The idea that they were now targeting Earth was incomprehensible. "They're declaring war," Cruz said, voice trembling. A moment of stunned silence passed before Cassandra made a decision. Prepare for immediate departure to Earth. Get us through the jump gate. I need to speak to Earth Command. As the ship adjusted its course, Cassandra's mind raced. The awakening powers of humanity were still unraveling, and the Aetherians had evidently detected this shift. Perhaps they feared what humans could become. The gods had been dormant for millennia, but now they were stirring. It was clear the Aetherians knew that, somehow, humanity had tapped into something dangerous. Back on Earth, chaos was unfolding on an unprecedented scale. Sergeant Ethan Hayes had been deployed to a military base in Colorado, where he was put in charge of a rapidly assembled strike force. His newfound abilities made him a natural leader, instinctively taking charge in ways he'd never done before. The energy inside him was both overwhelming and exhilarating, like a force of nature that couldn't be contained. Standing at the front of his team, Ethan felt the familiar buzz of the battlefield, but now it was different. He could hear things he'd never noticed before. The wind's path across the field, the heartbeats of his soldiers, the hum of energy vibrating in the air. It was as though the entire world had become a tangible thing he could reach out and touch. Ethan, focus, Captain Harris called, snapping him out of his reverie. The Aetherians are inbound. We need to intercept their advance team before they land. Nodding, Ethan turned to the squad, his newfound confidence evident in the way he stood. We'll hit them hard, hit them fast. They don't know what's coming. The first wave of Aetherian ships arrived over Earth's atmosphere, sleek and elegant in design, their advanced weapons primed for battle. But they weren't prepared for what humanity could now do. Ethan's squadron, enhanced by the latent powers awakening within them, engaged the alien forces with an intensity that caught the Aetherians completely off guard. Ethan led the charge, his mind working at lightning speed, anticipating every move. With a single thought, he activated a force field around his team, blocking incoming plasma fire with ease. Then, without hesitation, he launched himself into the air, propelled by a surge of kinetic energy that sent him soaring through the chaos. He dove directly into the heart of the Aetherian fleet, his body moving faster than the eye could follow. His hands crackled with energy as he unleashed a devastating shockwave, tearing through the alien ships with brutal efficiency. They were no match for the raw power of the war gods awakening inside humanity. The skies above Earth erupted into a blinding fury, explosions and energy beams lighting up the atmosphere as Ethan and his team fought with the ferocity of warriors long forgotten. The battle was only beginning, but Ethan knew one thing for certain. The Aetherians had underestimated humanity. The gods had not only awoken, but they were ready to fight. The battle raged above Earth, the skies a chaotic dance of explosions, shimmering energy shields, and the destructive power unleashed by humans who were only beginning to understand the true extent of their abilities. The Aetherians had underestimated humanity, but they were learning quickly. Every new human warrior was like a spark to a powder keg, raw, untamed, and devastating. Back on the ground, Sergeant Ethan Hayes stood amidst the wreckage of an Aetherian craft, breathing heavily but feeling alive in a way he'd never imagined possible. His body hummed with energy, his senses sharpened to a degree that was almost disorienting. He could feel the pulse of life around him, the beat of his comrades' hearts, the vibrations of the earth beneath his feet. It was as though he had become a part of the world, and the world was a part of him. "Ethan, are you all right?" Captain Harris asked, her voice tinged with both awe and concern. You're not the same. What happened out there?" Ethan shook his head, still trying to make sense of the flood of sensations crashing through him. I don't know. It's like something inside me just woke up. He wasn't alone in feeling this way. Across the world, millions of humans were experiencing the same strange awakening. Some were gaining strength, others speed, others powers they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Entire cities were in turmoil as humanity struggled to process the shift that had begun. Scientists, military leaders, and ordinary citizens were all coming to terms with the reality that something ancient, something forgotten, was emerging from the depths of their DNA. At the same time, Cassandra Nguyen, still aboard the Sovereign, had begun to piece together the origins of the war gods within humanity. The discovery was both enlightening and terrifying. Ancient texts, long buried in Earth's archives, began to reveal truths that had been suppressed for millennia. She sat in her quarters, surrounded by digital scrolls and holographic projections of ancient civilizations. What she found wasn't just a record of gods or warriors. It was the history of the very human race itself. The gods that had been sealed away in human genetics had once been rulers of a vast empire, beings capable of shaping the universe. The Etherians had fought a brutal war against them, driven by fear and jealousy of their power. It was a war that humanity had forgotten, but the Etherians hadn't. They had seen the destruction that the war gods could bring, and, in a desperate bid for survival, had sealed the gods' power inside human DNA, hoping that it would remain dormant forever. But the awakening had begun. The signal that Cassandra had intercepted, the cryptic warning, had not been a random occurrence. It had been a trigger, one that was set into motion when humanity reached a certain threshold of advancement. Now, the Etherians knew that the gods within humans were beginning to stir, and they were desperate to stop it before it was too late. Cassandra's hands trembled as she read further. "We are too late," she whispered under her breath. "The war isn't over, it's just beginning." Meanwhile, the world had already begun to change. Across the globe, humans were starting to realize the scope of their newfound abilities. People who had been average, ordinary citizens were suddenly rising to prominence, heroes and warriors in their own right. But with these new powers came danger. Those who couldn't control their gifts, who were driven by fear or ego, began to wreak havoc. Governments scrambled to contain the situation. Project Genesis, a top-secret initiative to study and control these powers, had been formed in response to the crisis. Yet even as they worked to understand and regulate the abilities now coursing through humanity, there were whispers of those who would use this power for darker purposes. Ethan, standing at the forefront of the military's efforts, had already seen the darker side of this awakening. Soldiers like him had started to take matters into their own hands, believing they were invincible. Some acted as protectors, others as tyrants. And some, like the traitors in Earth's own ranks, were conspiring with the Etherians. It wasn't just about the power anymore. It was about control. And who would be the true heirs to the legacy of the gods? The battle for Earth's survival had escalated into something much more than a war. It was a struggle for control over humanity's very essence. As more humans awakened to the power that lay dormant within them, old alliances fractured, and new dangerous factions emerged. The world was no longer united under the banner of peaceful diplomacy or order. It was divided between those who sought to harness their powers for good and those who saw them as a tool for domination. Sergeant Ethan Hayes, now one of the most powerful figures in the military, struggled to maintain his focus amidst the chaos. Despite the raw, unfiltered strength coursing through his veins, something gnawed at him, a deep, unsettling feeling that perhaps humanity's new abilities weren't just a blessing, but a curse. The more he tapped into his own power, the more he felt like he was losing himself, his humanity slipping away with each battle. He sat on the edge of a fallen Etherian ship, watching the sky streaked with the remnants of destroyed enemy craft. The sounds of war, explosions, shouts, the hum of energy weapons, echoed around him. But within the chaos, there was a strange silence in his mind. It was as if the world had stopped moving, and in that stillness, he could hear the deep, rumbling voice that had been growing inside him since his powers had awakened. "You are more than human," the voice whispered. "You are the inheritor of the god's power. Embrace it." Ethan shook his head, trying to silence the voice. It was too much, too fast. He had barely begun to understand the power inside him, and now it was demanding more, demanding control. "Sergeant, we've got movement," A voice snapped him back to reality. Private Miller, his most trusted squad mate, was standing a few feet away, pointing toward the horizon. "Looks like more Aetherian ships are coming in hot. They're bringing reinforcements." Ethan stood up, pushing the voice aside for the moment. The world needed him now, needed all of them. The Aetherians were not just invaders. They were also desperate to stop the rise of the gods within humanity. They had underestimated the awakening, and now they were scrambling to crush it before it was too late. Back in the heart of Earth's government, Cassandra Nguyen had been working tirelessly to uncover more about the war god's origins, and more importantly, the source of the message that had triggered humanity's transformation. She had uncovered a secret that sent chills down her spine. The power that lay within humans wasn't just the legacy of ancient gods. It was a weapon that, if fully unleashed, could bring about not just the destruction of the Aetherians, but the end of all life in the galaxy. The Aetherians had not only fought the gods millennia ago, they had sealed away the very source of their power. The gods' essence had been embedded in humanity's genetic code, not as a gift, but as a safeguard. Humanity had been created as both a vessel and a weapon, one that the Aetherians could manipulate and control if the need arose. Cassandra's fingers trembled as she scanned through the ancient records. The final line of the text struck her like a blow. "When the time comes, the chosen will awaken, and only one can survive." Her breath caught in her throat. The war gods had been sealed away for a reason, and now that they had awakened, humanity itself was on the brink of collapse. It wasn't just a fight between humans and Aetherians. It was a fight for control of a power so vast, it could change the very fabric of existence. And at the center of it all was the terrifying realization. Humanity's greatest strength might also be its greatest weakness. There could be only one true heir to the power of the gods, and the struggle for that dominance would tear the world apart. As the skies darkened with the incoming Aetherian fleet, Cassandra knew one thing for certain. The battle for Earth's future had only just begun. The winds of change howled across Earth's surface as the world teetered on the brink of collapse. The Aetherians, once seen as humanity's peaceful allies, now advanced with a relentless determination, their fleet growing larger with each passing day. But it wasn't just the alien invaders that humanity had to fear. No, the real threat was internal. A fracture was spreading through the very heart of the human race. Sergeant Ethan Hayes stood at the front lines, feeling the weight of his newfound power with every step. His body was a conduit of energy, his mind a weapon sharper than any blade. But beneath the surge of strength, something darker began to awaken within him. The voice, that whisper in the back of his mind, had grown louder. "You are the chosen. You were always meant to lead." The temptation to embrace it, to seize control, gnawed at him. Across the globe, others like him were experiencing the same pull. The desire to dominate, to impose order on a world unraveling at the seams. Some, like Ethan, still held on to their humanity, struggling to resist the urge to become something more, something godlike. Others, however, had already crossed that line. The world had fractured into two distinct factions, those who believed that the war gods should be the future of humanity, and those who sought to remain true to the values that had defined Earth for centuries. The former, calling themselves the Ascendants, had emerged as powerful leaders, capable of reshaping society with their newfound abilities. The latter, the Resistance, fought to preserve humanity's freedom, wary of the uncontrollable power that the Ascendants sought to wield. Ethan had tried to remain neutral, focusing on his role as a soldier, but the lines were blurring. His team had encountered Ascendant forces in the field, and the difference between their powers was staggering. They moved with the grace of gods, their strength unparalleled, their abilities like nothing humanity had ever witnessed. Ethan could sense the shift in the air as they fought. He could feel the electricity crackling around them, a raw, primal energy that threatened to consume everything in its path. But it wasn't just the Ascendants who were dangerous. The Resistance, too, had begun to mobilize, forming underground networks to resist the rise of the war gods. They had their own champions, humans who, like Ethan, had gained powers but refused to embrace the tyranny that the Ascendants represented. Their movements were subtle, guerrilla in nature, striking at the heart of the Ascendant forces with calculated precision. Yet, as the world spiraled into this new era of conflict, a deeper mystery lingered. Cassandra Nguyen's research had uncovered a disturbing truth. The source of humanity's latent abilities was not just an accident of evolution or a gift from the gods. It was a result of manipulation. Manipulation by an ancient force that had seeded humanity's creation long before the Aetherians had even encountered them. The gods had not been just warriors, but a force designed to dominate. Humanity's DNA had been altered in secret, and the power they now wielded was not theirs to control. It was a weapon, one designed to bring about a new order in the galaxy, a weapon that the Aetherians had feared and sealed away long ago. But the seal was breaking, and humanity had become both the weapon and the battlefield. Cassandra's mind raced. If the Ascendants succeeded, if they fully embraced the power of the gods, humanity would no longer be able to coexist with the Aetherians. The galaxy itself would be forever changed. But if the resistance succeeded, would humanity be able to resist the power inside them? Would they even survive the battle for control? The world was breaking. The war had begun, and now it was not just about survival. It was about who would hold the key to the future of humanity, and whether the gods within them could be controlled or destroyed. The Earth was on the brink of collapse, its cities ravaged by internal strife and alien invasion. The battle lines between the Ascendants and the Resistance were drawn, and the air itself seemed to hum with the raw energy of humanity's potential. But with every passing day, the fracture within the human race deepened, pulling them further into conflict. Sergeant Ethan Hayes, once a soldier among millions, now stood at the crossroads of destiny. His powers had grown beyond his control. His body was a weapon, a vessel for the raw energy of the gods, and yet his mind was still tethered to the humanity he fought to protect. But that tether was weakening. The voice in his head, "Embrace the power. Lead the way. You are the one they will follow," grew louder with every battle. The Ascendants were rising, each more powerful than the last, and they were looking to him for guidance. Ethan could feel the weight of their gaze, the pressure to accept his place as their leader. But at what cost? His squad had become a symbol of the resistance, fighting to keep humanity's free will intact. But they were losing. As more and more humans awakened to their latent abilities, they were drawn to the Ascendant's vision. A new world order, a world where the war gods ruled, and all would bend to their will. The Resistance fought desperately, but they were outmatched. The Ascendants were too powerful, too unified, and they were growing stronger with every passing day. Ethan stood atop a ruined skyscraper in New York, watching the horizon where the battle between the Ascendants and the Aetherian fleet was intensifying. The Aetherians had retaliated, pushing back with a ferocity that was both alien and terrifying. But the Ascendants had adapted quickly, harnessing the raw power of the war gods within them, turning the tide in their favor. Beside him stood Captain Harris, her face grim. "They're pushing back the Aetherians," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We never thought we'd see the day." Ethan didn't respond immediately. His mind was elsewhere, on the battlefield, on the war that was brewing within him. It was a battle that would decide humanity's future. Would they remain free, or would they succumb to the will of the gods awakening inside them? "Do not resist," the voice whispered, like a caress in his mind. "You are the one. Only you can unite them. Only you can lead them to victory." He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to yield. The world depended on him, but the cost was becoming clearer. The longer he resisted the pull, the harder it became to control the power surging through him. He could feel the shift within his own body, the temptation to give in, to accept his place as the true heir to the gods' power. His vision blurred, and for a moment, He saw flashes of a future where humanity was no longer divided, where the ascendants ruled, and all were subjugated beneath them. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. He turned to Harris, his expression hardening. "We can't let them win. Not like this." Captain Harris nodded, her resolve solidifying. "We fight. We fight for our freedom, for our future." But Ethan knew the truth. The battle wasn't just against the Aetherians anymore. It was a war within himself. The god's power inside him was growing, and the line between resisting it and giving in was becoming dangerously thin. In the heart of the Sovereign, Cassandra Nguyen watched the battle unfold from her command center. The Ascendants had begun their final push, and Earth was teetering on the edge of annihilation. But she knew the stakes were higher than ever before. If humanity's gods were allowed to reign, if they were allowed to shape the galaxy, there would be no going back. Her fingers hovered over the control panel. The Aetherians had given her a weapon. A secret, a way to break the power of the gods within humanity. But using it would mean everything would change. It would mean risking the very soul of the human race. And yet it was the only option left. The final reckoning was coming. And Cassandra knew that whether humanity stood as masters of the gods' power or destroyed itself in the process depended on a single choice: who would control the future. The world held its breath as the final battle unfolded, a fierce storm of energy, will, and unrelenting force that tore through the very fabric of Earth itself. The Ascendants had risen, their powers nearly unmatched, their conviction absolute. Humanity had been divided, but now it all came down to one final confrontation, the ultimate test of will, strength, and control. Sergeant Ethan Hayes stood at the heart of the battlefield, the energy inside him a thunderous roar, like a storm ready to break. The Ascendants surrounded him, their glowing eyes locked on him with a mixture of reverence and expectation. They were ready to crown him as their leader, to submit to the power he held inside. Yet as the energy surged through him, Ethan could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on him. He knew that once he embraced the full power of the war gods, there would be no turning back. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. He had been on the front lines long enough to understand the consequences of this moment. His team, his comrades, had fought with him every step of the way. The resistance, the soldiers who stood for freedom and choice, were ready to sacrifice everything to stop the Ascendants from taking control. Yet, as he looked at the faces of the Ascendants, those who had embraced their power and accepted their fate, he knew that this battle was no longer just against the Aetherians or the Ascendants. It was a war for the soul of humanity itself. "Embrace the power," the voice whispered, seductive and unwavering. "You were always meant for this. To lead, to bring order, to reshape the world in your image." Ethan closed his eyes, trying to shut out the voice, the temptation. The vision it offered was too clear, too powerful. He could see a world where humanity was united under the war gods, where power flowed freely, where there would be no need for resistance, no need for war. But at what cost? Would humanity lose its soul in the pursuit of this power? "Don't do it, Ethan." Captain Harris's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. "You know what's at stake. We fight for freedom, for choice. Don't become what they want you to be." Her words were a lifeline. Ethan's gaze hardened as he turned to face the Ascendants. The struggle within him was immense, but one thing was clear. He could not allow humanity to become a tool for the gods' will. He was not their heir. He was their equal. He had to fight for humanity's right to choose its own path. With a sudden surge of determination, Ethan raised his hands, releasing a burst of energy that sent shockwaves through the air. The Ascendants hesitated, startled by the raw power emanating from him, but Ethan's focus remained steady. "This ends now," he declared, his voice echoing across the battlefield. The war between the Ascendants and Resistance intensified, but this time it was different. The lines between them blurred as both sides were forced to confront the reality of what they were fighting for. For the first time, the Ascendants saw that they were not gods, but humans, flawed and fallible, just like the rest of the world. At the same time, Cassandra Nguyen watched from the Sovereign, her finger hovering over the button that would activate the weapon designed to neutralize the power of the gods within humanity. But as she watched Ethan, as she saw the conviction in his eyes, she hesitated. She knew that what she had was a last resort, a way to stop the madness that had consumed both the Ascendants and the Resistance. But it was also a way to destroy what made humans special, their potential to rise above their past, to break free from the chains of destiny. In the end, it was Ethan's will that would decide the fate of Earth. He was the key, the fulcrum upon which the world would pivot. The Ascendants moved in to claim their victory, but Ethan stood firm, not just as a soldier, but as the embodiment of humanity's future. And as the final explosion of energy enveloped the battlefield, a new dawn broke over Earth, a dawn where humanity would choose its own path, no longer bound by the legacy of the gods, but guided by the strength of its will. The war was over. The gods were no longer hidden within humanity, nor were they in control. Humanity had reclaimed its future. The awakening was complete.